Morning all, thanks for bearing with us while we fix the video system. Welcome to the Development Management Committee meeting. Before we go any further, I'll just ask committee members to introduce themselves so those listening and here in the room know who's who, starting with Councillor Moody.
Councillor Jeff Moody, Tavistock North.
Councillor Graham Reid, Tavistock North.
Councillor Tony Leach, Oakhampton North.
Councillor Sam Wakeham for Hatherley.
Councillor Alistair Cunningham, Buckland Monacorum.
Councillor Mott, Bridistow Ward.
Councillor Southcott, Bridistow Ward.
Sorry, Chairman, I thought it was Councillor. Pat Weimer, Head of Development Management.
Good morning, everyone. David Fairbairn, Head of Legal Services and the Council's Monitoring Officer.
Councillor Rick Cheadle, representing Buckland Monacorum and chairing the committee.
Councillor Steve Guthrie, Drew Stainton Ward.
Catherine Hall, Democratic Services Officer.
Graham Lawrence, Senior Planner, Heritage.
Thank you very much. Apologies for absence.
We have no apologies, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Declarations of interest. In accordance with the Code of Conduct, members are invited to declare any disclosable pecuniary interests, other registrable interests and non-registrable interests, including the nature and extent of such interests they may have in any items to be considered at this meeting. Are there any declarations of interest at this stage? Very much. Items of urgent business, there are none brought to my attention. So that leaves us with, leads on to item 5, which is the confirmation of the minutes of the last meeting on the 16th of September. Is everybody happy that they are a true representation of the meeting? Can I have a show of hands, please? Carried unanimously, thank you. We now have a short statement from the legal officer.
Thank you, Chairman. In terms of deciding the application that's on the agenda this morning, the committee will have regard to the development plan and any material considerations, and will determine the application in accordance with the development plan when it's read as a whole, unless any material considerations suggest otherwise. Material considerations are those considerations relating to the use and development of land in the public interest. If something is not or does not come within that definition, then it will not be taken into account. Okay, thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. We have one application in front of us today, which is 125425 Full, Paddens Road, Tavistock. The planning officer is not physically with us today, but is online, so I'll hand over to her for her report. Are you there?
There's an issue with sound, Councillor, so it might be that she can't hear us in the meeting.
Right, if you can hear us, you're on mute.
Okay, can you hear me? And I'll just put my camera on. Okay, so the camera should be on. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Can you hear us?
Barely. So can you see my screen as well?
Yes, we can.
Okay, that's great. All right, well, I'll start the presentation and we'll just do our best.
Thank you.
Okay. So we are at Paddens Row in Tavistock. Those of you that went on the site visit last week will obviously be familiar with the site. And this one is for a new dwelling to be constructed. Now, since we spoke last week at the site visit, I've had updates from Devon County Council Highways team and also Devon County Council Archaeology team. So I'll start the presentation with their updates. So the Highways team have asked for some conditions to be put on. This is just because of the potential for there to be an impact of the construction on the retaining wall that holds up Exeter Road. So what we have suggested is a pre-commencement condition where the details of any works come to us for approval prior to commencement. I haven't agreed that with the applicant just yet. Obviously, we would need to do that. And there's also an informative that the applicant will need to contact Devon County Council structures team separately to get an approval in principle before any works begin. The other condition is from DCC Archaeology, and the applicant will need to submit a written scheme of investigation before they start any works. Again, I haven't agreed that condition with the applicant yet, but there's no reason to suggest that they wouldn't agree to those. And then that's just to make sure that the post-investigation assessment is logged properly. Okay, so into the main presentation now. So the site location plan, just to show you the site edged in red. Obviously, you've got Old Exeter Road to the north and then Brook Street to the south. There was a question on the site visit about public highways. Obviously, this is something that I was able to answer on the site visit, but I think it's helpful just to see it on a map anyway. So Paddons Row is counted as a public highway. Okay, so this is just the aerial view. And the blue shows the area that the applicant owns. And obviously the red shows the extent of the site. And then the shaded area is where the new dwelling will be sited. So these are the ground floor, first floor and site plans. I've shown them on a slightly expanded version just so that you've got a better view. There was a question on the site visit about the location of the pond. So it's very close to the edge of the old stables to the south. That just shows that there for you. There was also a question on the site visit about the distance between Paddons Row and the dwelling, and it's about 1 metre. Air source heat pump and obviously bins are shown on the right hand side of the floor plan. And these are the elevations just to show you the dwelling in context. So you can see the solar panels on the roof, and then on the right hand side you can see that storage area. These are just to give you an indication of the materials and finishes. So the applicant wants a sedum roof and a green wall, along with sort of more contemporary windows and doors. This is not to scale, so it's really important that you take that into account. But this just shows you a general view of what the dwelling will look like in situ. And you can see at the very top of the image the window in the cafe of Paddons Row relative to the dwelling. But again, it's not to scale, so it's not completely accurate. And then the bottom is just a sort of general idea of what the solarium will look like from the inside. And you can see the retaining wall for Old Exeter Road on the right-hand side. So these are some photos just to refresh your memory. Again, those of you on the site visit, we did walk these views so that you'll be familiar with them. So this is the junction between Old Exeter Road on the left and Elbow Lane, looking towards the site. And then from Old Exeter Road looking down, so you can see the old stables in the centre of the view, and then Paddons Row on the left-hand side. Again, just slightly moved around. And then this is the view from Paddons Row. You've got the cafe that we went into on the right-hand side of the image. This is the access to Brook Street. And then this is the access from Paddons Row into the site itself. the old stables on the left, and then Paddens Row on the right, and then you can see the dwellings above Old Exeter Road in the far distance. And then this is the site itself. So this is Paddens Row, and then the top left, you can see that window that we saw in the cafe. Paddens Row, just slightly further down. The old stables. And then this is the view inside the cafe. So we're facing north at the moment, excuse me. And then the window in question is on the left-hand side of the image. This is the view through that window. I know most of you on the site visit had a good look when you were there, so you're all familiar with this. So the key issues for the application, we're aware it's a town centre location within the setting of listed buildings, the conservation area, the World Heritage Site, and the primary shopping area of the Joint Local Plan. As a town centre location, it's a sustainable location for new residential development, and the proposal would deliver 1 2-bedroom dwelling. We've got all the technical matters controlled by condition. The tilted balance is engaged in favour of the development because the local planning authority hasn't got a 5-year housing land supply. And on that basis, we would recommend conditional approval, subject to the completion of the unilateral undertaking for mitigation for the Tamar EMS, and obviously the extra conditions at the start of the presentation.
Or is that the end of your report? Can you hear me?
Barely. Can you get really close to the microphone, see if that fixes it?
I was just checking that that's the end of your report.
Oh, yes. Sorry.
Okay, and you can hear me?
Yes,
Thank you.
I can hear you now.
Okay, that's the officer's report. So questions from members of the committee to the officer, planning officer. Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, has the applicant indicated the work schedule, the process for the construction and the impact on the community?
So what we have recommended is a pre-commencement construction management plan. So what that means is before any works begin on site, the applicant will have to give us full details of what they're doing, how many vehicles they anticipate, where the materials will be stored, hours of work, days of work, how long they think it will take, and we would approve that in advance. Those details would be sort of in the public domain. So, and obviously we would consult on those with environmental health, highways, those sorts of people, and then we would, if we were happy with everything, we would approve it, and then the applicant would need to proceed in accordance with those approved details. And if they wanted to make any changes, they would have to come back and ask us for permission again.
So there will be monitoring of the disruption to neighbours and road access as part of that.
So we would ask them to tell us what they wanted to do before they started doing it. If there was any deviation from that plan, then obviously we would need to enforce that, but we don't go out and actively monitor that construction site. We assume that they will work in accordance with the approved details until we're informed otherwise.
I might just remind you, the applicant is a registered speaker, so there'll be an opportunity to ask the applicant questions like that when the time comes. Councillor Moody.
Before I go onto the wall, on this case of the management plan, construction management plan, I don't see any inclusion of a vibration monitoring scheme adjacent to the wall. I also don't see that there is a named community liaison officer for the site, that because there are several dwellings adjacent to the site, and that would be helpful. And also, is there going to be any, based on the letters of representation, a number of the shops in Paddens Row were concerned of disruption. Can we consider an embargo of any movement of traffic within Paddens Row during business hours? So that's the questions I have on the management plan.
So we wouldn't normally put those conditions on a single dwelling, but obviously that's within the discretion of the committee to decide if they don't accept the officer recommendation.
It was just particularly the one about the vibration monitoring next to the wall. Maybe our heritage expert might be able to comment on that, having said that you're not an engineer. But that was just my concern, because I do have concerns about the wall, as you know, and I do have also support the businesses in Paddens Road.
Yep. Senior Planning Officer would like to come in on that question.
I would expect any construction management plan to have a named person. That would be standard practice. If members were looking for a vibration monitoring regime, I think that would need to be a separate condition. It's not, you wouldn't normally include it as part of a construction management plan. It goes a little bit further than just normally sort of the normal management of construction. So I think if members were concerned, that would need to be a separate condition. I think it would be, in terms of the disruption to local businesses, and I absolutely understand the point being made. I think there would be, if we were saying there should be either, I don't know, no deliveries between, I don't know, 8:30 and 5 o'clock, I think you could then, the unintended consequences are the noise and disruption for any nearby residents of the deliveries being either early or late. So I think it would be quite challenging to have a complete embargo around for business hours, but I think we could seek to ensure that deliveries all came within a certain time frame, so it wasn't 1 at 10, 1 at 12, 1 at 2.
Now, I was meaning to Paddens Row. Looking at the site itself, I can't see how construction traffic and equipment can be enter the site other than aerially from Old Exeter Road. I'm talking about Paddens Row itself, which has a number of small businesses in it. It's that direction that I just wondered whether an embargo would be considered.
I would suggest that might be an appropriate question for the speaker, the supporting speaker, in terms of how have they already considered how materials are going to get onto the site, and then perhaps that could form part of your debate.
Okay, any other questions for the Planning Officer? Councillor Leach.
Yes. With a clarification, there's one picture actually showing it's going to be a sedum roof, but another picture showing that it's predominantly solar. Which is it?
So the plans indicate that it will be solar and then edged with sedum. So yes, given the area for glazing and solar, the sedum element would be quite a small element, but that's how it's shown on the plans.
Thank you.
Councillor Mott.
Thank you. I've got questions, please, under your assessment of this application against Dev 10. Can you confirm, please, what the garden space would be? Because it would indicate, all of our policies would indicate that it would need a minimum of 100 square metres. Can you confirm that they've got that?
Yes, so if you see on the plans here, garden is shown as 110 square metres.
Thank you. And probably a slightly unfair question, so I'll apologise now. We can speak after. You mentioned in your presentation that given that it's a tilted balance, so my question would be, if we had a secure 5-year supply, would you still be of the opinion that this would be an acceptable application?
I would say yes, on the basis that it's in a town centre location and it's within walking distance of all of the services that you would need for sort of daily life.
Thank you.
Before I come to you, Councillor, I have one question. Could you just go back to the very first thing you said about your discussions with Devon County Council and the condition you were suggesting about the structure of the wall that this house adjoins to. Could you just run me through that again?
Okay, so the Devon County Council Highways team have asked us to put on a condition to make sure that any structural works or works to the wall itself are submitted to us before they do anything, and then we will consult with Devon County Council and make sure that those works don't impinge on the structural integrity of that retaining wall. Separate to that, the applicant will also need to have approval from the structures team, but obviously we're not requesting that through condition, that's through an informative.
Just to be clear, the top paragraph is the comments from the County Council. The second paragraph in italics is our suggested condition to deal with that, because we don't feel it's appropriate or lawful to have a condition requiring them to get approval from another body. They need to get approval from us, hence the details to us, and we'll consult. So the condition and the condition is the second paragraph in italics. The reason for the condition is the third paragraph. Oh, sorry, third and fourth paragraph, and the bottom paragraph is an informative we would put on the consent. Just for clarity, members.
Yes, this may be a question that I need to address to the applicant, but if the wall that this proposed development butts onto requires some form of ongoing maintenance or maintenance in the future, would that be the responsibility of the owner of the property, the owner of the wall, or do we bear any response, or do Devon County Council bear any responsibility for the maintenance of the wall, given that it holds up the road?
I can see Pat is possibly speaking.
I wasn't, but I can. It wouldn't be the response, as it stands at the moment. It wouldn't be the responsibility of the Borough Council, because it would either be the responsibility of the landowner or the Highways Authority. I'm not 100% sure of the responsibility when a privately owned wall potentially holds up a public highway. I honestly don't know who's responsible, but it would ultimately be a matter between the Highways Authority and the owner of the wall, I suspect.
My understanding is the owner of the wall is not the applicant.
That is my understanding, because there's the appropriate notice number 1 and certificate B was signed by the applicant. So it can be clarified, but my understanding is that the applicant isn't the owner of the wall.
Yes, and just one rotation further on from that, given that statement, is that statement really refers to the impact that the proposed building might have on the wall.
Yes, it is.
Rather than, my concern, and maybe it's not a legitimate one, my concern was, were the building to go ahead and were it to be in place and then something go wrong with the wall, which requires some form of upkeep, maintenance, regrouting, I don't know what, it could require the removal of the building to do that.
So the wall remains exposed inside the building, but I think details beyond that would need to be sought from the applicant.
Okay, if you could just go on to the plan of the building, I think the next slide along. That one, yeah. Back one, that one there. The brown line is the wall of the building, and the wall of the building actually butts onto the wall, the retaining wall. The two are physically connected.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that was my point, that if the retaining wall did require some work, I'm not quite sure, I mean, maybe way outside planning here, but I'm not quite sure how that would happen without taking the building down.
I'll just say, if you look there, the solarium, you can access from inside the solarium. So the actual build for the house is different to that glass.
I'll reserve that question for the applicant when the applicant comes to talk to us.
Okay.
You just flick back one, please. No, one more, showing the, one more. That one.
I think both the chairman and vice chairman are correct in that the solarium itself clearly has the wall exposed, but I think perhaps, Chairman, you're referring to the storage and plant area, which has the wall immediately adjacent to the wall. Yes. Yes.
I'll reserve those questions for the applicant. Any other questions? Councillor Moody, and then Councillor Southcott. Councillor Moody first.
Thank you very much. Yes, I wanted to elaborate on the wall situation. It's a little bit unfair for us today to have been shown a condition on a screen. We haven't had time to read it and digest it. But what I quickly noticed is that as I understand it, the condition will be that that discussions with highways, structures, engineers will take place. I'm surprised that the part of the condition doesn't include access for inspection and maintenance to be part of that condition, ongoing during the life of the development. But that is something that may come out. So this is where it's a little bit ethereal, that we have talks will be had with highways, but we don't know what the results of those talks will be and how that will affect the development. So, so I have concerns about that. When we saw it's a substantial wall for those who weren't there. You know, it's, what is it, 25 to 30 feet high. It's aged and it's covered in vegetation. It has trees growing out of it. It has a buttress leaning up against it.
Is this leading to a question?
Yes. I just want to know why why this condition isn't more specific about the ongoing maintenance, because that does come under DEV 29, which is the safe provision of a highway. So it is a material reason.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to respond?
I can. And I'm sure Brian will correct me if I'm wrong here, but we've sought advice from County Highways. The condition is as County Highways have requested us to impose, and they didn't mention anything around ongoing maintenance. So we've as the Highways Authority have given us advice, that's the advice we've taken.
Okay.
Just one more question. There's no structural impact assessment. There's no structural, which is being provided by the applicant either.
Okay, who else wanted a question? Councillor Southcott.
On the site visit, when we walked up round the top onto Old Exeter Road, there was obvious signs of crack right down the middle of the road. Has this got any bearing on the structure of the wall and its integrity in the near future, that it may not stay in place?
So highways haven't raised any concerns with us. Obviously, highways are inspected separately. So any issues are likely to be raised at that point.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Reid.
Has anybody or any of the authorities done an analysis on previous history of this area in terms of the building of the wall, the construction of the road, archive documents, etc.? Because clearly that's a good place to be looking to get an idea of potential issues. I mean, this lack of concern from the county council, I consider to be a bit of a concern, because a major collapse like that could be very dangerous, both in terms of life and limb and structure.
Chair, I have done some research into the history of the site. As with many places in Devon, it's pretty vague. What we do know is that the Tavistock Toll Trust, took it over in the early part of the 19th century, and the listed milestone that you will have seen on the corner at the junction with Elbow Street reflects of that age, and that marks the starting point of their control. Undoubtedly, though, the road was in existence before then, because that Turnpike Trust, sorry, I forgot the word turnpike for a while, their role was to improve the road between Tavistock and Oakhampton and between Tavistock and Plymouth. That meant improvements to bits that didn't already exist, that were incapable of use by the state-of-the-art carriages of the time. I would guess, my best guess is that this wall is probably 18th century. It's been subject to some repairs over the years, and there is a variation in character behind where the old Congregational Chapel used to be, where Pearl Assurance House now is, and behind this site. Then, of course, the buildings on Paddons Row were built and abutted against that, and indeed the modern development of Paddons Court has been built up against this wall without any issues or concerns. So I hope that begins to answer your question. It's the best I could find.
When you're looking at that road was built, you say, in the 1800s. Today, the vehicles that now use it are probably 20 times heavier. And I am concerned, quite concerned, about the crack that's going all the way up through Old Exeter Road. It's been heavily patched in one place. So is there a chance of that literally slipping out? That's the question, and it's a serious one. Paddons Row itself will be holding up the wall, but here I can't see anything that's going to support the wall.
All I can say is, not being an engineer, as Councillor Moody correctly pointed out, recent experience with the Devon County Council structures team in Hatherley shows that they are extremely thorough. Where a wall collapsed there, they were requiring anchor bolts to be put through back to bedrock. So I personally would have a lot of faith in the Devon County structures team requiring any work that is necessary once they've looked into it in more detail. But obviously at this stage they haven't.
I remain concerned over the word approval in principle in that statement. I recommend any approval granted be subject to a condition requiring an approval in principle, not approval in principle.
That was the consultation response from Devon County Council to us. I think we've gone a little bit further than that in our recommended condition, because we don't use that phrase. And I think officers agree that it does need some more assessment of structural integrity and the impact.
Okay, I'll leave it there. Councillor Leach.
The wall itself, from its age, surely that's of historic significance as it is. And is it the last section of the wall that hasn't been supported?
It is a historic wall, as we've said in the reports. The applicant did make a listed building consent application, but on closer consideration of the case, because of the ownership situation and the origins of the wall, it was decided that it wasn't actually a curtilage listed structure, but it is a non-designated heritage asset that makes a positive contribution to the character and appearance of the conservation area and the setting of listed buildings. So.
Thank you.
Is it, sorry, and is it the last section that's unsupported? We know there's other buildings sort of holding it up. But this is sort of virgin wall.
The wall is supported further along. It's not supported back the other way. To be honest, having walked along Old Exeter Road, there's a lot of vegetation. There are places where it's partially supported, parts where it's completely supported, but the application is only affecting this small section of what is a very long, continuous structure.
Thank you. Any other questions? These are questions for the planning officer.
A brief question, yes. Do we know the owner of the wall, and is it an individual or is it an organisation, a trust, a heritage, or what? And are they prepared to be involved in this process?
So we do know the owner, but the name has been redacted online. Perhaps that's something that you can have a chat with the applicant about when he speaks.
Say, Chairman, apart from anything else, it's irrelevant. In terms of the determining the planning application, the identity of the owner of the wall is not relevant.
I'm thinking about liability of the ownership of the wall. If they could demand access at some point, that impacts on us.
Again, I don't think that's a material planning consideration.
Okay, if you say so.
Okay, I think we've exhausted questions for the planning officer, who's looking a bit relieved at that. And we will now on to our registered speakers. And the first one is Mr. John Woodhouse, who is the applicant. So, Mr. Woodhouse, if you'd like to come up. Very much. As I was explaining before we went into session, you'll have 3 minutes to say what you'd like to the committee, and then the committee have the opportunity to ask you questions after that. So when you're ready, press the button and off you go.
Thank you for the opportunity to address the committee, and also thank you to the case officer and to the conservation officer who prepared a thorough and accurate assessment of the proposal. The site is vacant and littered with old furniture, masonry and other discarded waste. It's easily accessible. Development will improve the appearance and provide security to a dark, hidden plot, as well as eliminate antisocial behaviour and prevent further waste being tipped on site. Okay, right. Policy Dev 8 requires that developments provide a mix of housing sizes, types and tenures appropriate to the area. The policy also recognises particular needs for households with specific requirements for dwellings, such as older people who wish to retain a sense of self-sufficiency. I was born in Princetown, attended primary school there and later Tavistock College. I lived and worked locally all my life and wish to relocate from an isolated country location to my local town so that I can be near all the services and facilities it offers. I suffer from a very rare degenerative autoimmune disease which affects most of my body and requires somewhere small, accessible and central to live. The site includes a large stone retaining wall, which we've discussed at great length, which is not listed but is significant to the conservation area and World Heritage Site. The building has minimal impact on and limited contact with the wall and will be secured with resin bolts at key points using flexible fixings and seals which allow differential movement between the timber frame and the stone wall. The small trees and other foliage on the wall will be carefully removed and the wall repointed and monitored, thus extending its life and providing ongoing inspection and maintenance at no public cost. The proposal has minimal impact on neighbours both in terms of overshadowing and privacy. Indeed, the safety of people living in and visiting 3 Brook Street will be improved by additional surveillance. The building will be timber frames set on small concrete pot foundations. This means minimal disturbance of the ground, negligible noise, and a rapid, clean, and relatively quiet building process. The pre-app consultation suggested the use of stone and slate for walls. However, these are less sustainable than green walls, do not increase biodiversity, would involve a longer build process, and generate more noise and dust. Hence the choice of green walls, which will increase biodiversity, soften the form, and add to the appearance and character of the setting. Green walls can be erected using various methods. My preference is for troughs with vertical green screens, which can be installed quickly, are easily watered and maintained, and are almost instant. Surface water will not be disposed of as is a valuable resource. Some will be collected for grey water use in flushing toilets and watering plants. The remainder will be stored for use in the biodiverse water features inside and outside the building. Watering systems, pumps, and circulation will be computer controlled with battery backup powered by PV cells on the roof. Excess water will be discharged to the adjacent combined sewer at a controlled rate to avoid excess flows and retain as much as possible for use on site. The entire building will feature smart controls for heating, lighting, and other services, as well as high-speed broadband. The project is sustainable, meets a recognised housing need, has a positive impact on the setting, and is in accordance with local and national planning policies, and I hope that members feel confident in supporting the proposal.
Thank you very much. Well done for keeping to time too. Right, members of the committee, you have an opportunity to ask Mr Woodhouse questions. Councillor Moody.
Thank you very much for your introduction and explanation. I was interested to hear that, as you know, that a number of us are concerned of the condition of the wall, and I'm glad to hear that the attempts to repoint the wall are involved in your scheme. Is it the full wall that you're doing from side to side and top to bottom, or just where the house is?
It will be the entire width of the site.
And the other thing is that, are you proposing to submit a structural survey on the wall? Are you having one done so that that if there's any reparations necessary, that you'll have the full information before you?
Yes, we'll have a proper structural inspection, which will look at the condition of the wall, look at any repairs that are necessary and any improvements to it in terms of any fixings. Also, there will be electronic monitors installed to monitor any movement, both vertically and laterally, on the wall as it goes forward. I mean, at the end of the day, I will be living in this house in front of that wall, and I don't want to actually have it fall down on top of me, and I don't want to even start development with a chance of it falling down on top of me. It looks structurally sound. The initial engineer's assessment is it's in good condition, but as you say, it's actually got quite a lot of overgrowth from various small trees and other foliage on it. So that needs to be stripped off and examined in detail to look at the condition of the wall.
Thank you very much. There was another question I was going to ask. I think you've covered most of it. Oh yes, the access of the construction materials. You're saying it's timber framed, so that's going to be a lot easier to get into the site. My presumption was that you wouldn't be bringing it through Paddon's Row. It'll be coming over the wall.
You're correct. It will be manufactured actually in cassette form, which is actually in simple form, and then lowered by spider crane from the road above. So each unit actually only weighs about 100 kilograms, something like that.
And the construction time period?
I'm looking if depending on site conditions and the wall, which obviously requires maintenance, somewhere between 3 and 4 months.
Right. We did make the statement about whether highways will require access to the wall, but possibly, just thinking about it now, that if you are going to repair and repoint the wall, a lot of my questions may have been answered. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Moody, any other questions? Councillor Leach.
The footings. It's 2 kids. Sorry. Well, the footings and the controller of water in my 2 concerns. So if your footings are minimal for a timber frame, have you got engineer's report to say if that will have any detrimental effect to the footings of the main wall, 1? And 2, it's got a pond and other water systems around it. If you have too much water, it can create heave under the wall, which will give movement. If you have too little water, then you'll have the opposite effect. Have you had a proper water design system produced? Sorry.
I haven't designed it in detail, but I have a background in hydrology and water gardens and been building and constructing, designing water gardens for about 45 years. So all the elements will be looked at in detail in terms of the water flows, the water storage. Part of the surface water management scheme is to actually have a complete reservoir beneath the building, which I think is about 12,000 litres of storage. So it gives a huge capacity, and runoff will be minimal because of the green roof and obviously the green walls as well. So there'll be around about 900% overcapacity for water. So there's no chance of actually flooding occurring on the site. And also looking at the contribution, obviously we have to look at the fact that the wall will be drier than it currently is in some circumstances, because it doesn't actually then take rainfall, because it will be covered. That we then monitor, because again the watering and the control of the humidity in the solarium will be controlled, and the humidity can be then adjusted to actually mimic natural circumstances to maintain the moisture level of the wall, which is optimum. That we discussed with the structural engineer at the stage of report, and then built into the system in terms of the property itself.
Councillor Wakeham.
I see there's no provision for parking at the moment. So when the house is built, how close can deliveries get to you?
Deliveries in terms of after the house is built, like, I don't know,
So
postal
a washing
deliveries.
machine or a television or furniture or an online shop?
I mean, I don't use online shopping a great deal. So I can't see the need for many deliveries. Obviously, postal deliveries will take place. But I mean, one of the issues is that as I get older, not that far in the distance future, my mobility is going to be limited. And I don't know if the plans reflect that, actually the most recent plans, but they should include a lift. They should be on the most recent plans, so there is a lift built into the property. So other than, obviously, I think deliveries required to site in terms of appliances, okay, I mean, if you say an appliance will last 5 years, then once every 5 years we might need one-off delivery to deliver a washing machine or whatever to the site, but that's a fairly infrequent occurrence.
I'd add there are shops all up Haddon Road, they get deliveries, so this would just be like another one. Any other questions for Mr. Woodhouse? You got a question? Yeah.
John, thank you for your application. Very clear and very reassuring. I'm also very impressed by the green nature of the property. You'll know from the questionings earlier, we were concerned about disruptions to the other businesses locally. Can you address that issue and reassure us that there will be minimised problems for existing shopkeepers in the neighbourhood?
Yeah, I mean, I can say on a personal perspective, I've lived and worked in Tavistock, had an office in Tavistock, which was rented from the council. I shop in Tavistock. I was born just up the road in Princetown. I was educated in Tavistock. I support the local businesses here. I want to see them thrive. I work with businesses. In fact, we're actually developing, Graham will be aware, number 3 Brook Street, to divide it into 2 smaller shopping units, behind that into a small dwelling. So I've worked in the town as an architect for 40 years, nearly. So I will liaise with everybody in Paddons Row regarding deliveries. We will need minimum access because materials in terms of groundworks are minimum. We're looking at a pot foundation, probably 6 to 9 pots. So you're talking about 20 concrete blocks and 6 barrow loads of concrete. The rest of it will be brought in cassette form over the top of the wall. People will need to access the site, but they can park elsewhere in the town, in the multi-storey car park, for instance, on Old Exeter Street, and access with their tools in terms of that. So apart from a small digger, which will then be required for the drains, so a 1.5 ton, which will come through Paddons Row at the beginning to do the drains and the initial pots, there's no big plant required on site. Everything will be brought in from Old Exeter Road, and that will be, again, built in and consulted with, because obviously people in Paddens Row have some days when they're open and not. Some people actually have days, maybe weekends, where they're busier, etc. But obviously, the other thing I think was raised, possibly with one of the members, was if we had an embargo on 9 to 5, it only leaves us before and after that, which then affects people on an Exeter Street and other residential dwellings. So, but I'm aware of that, and I want to. That's one of the reasons for doing timber frame is to make it as fast as possible. So, I mean, this structure will go up in less than a week, start to finish. It's just the finishing side of it, which will then take another 2 or 3 months to actually finish off and do the green screening, the roofing, etc. But actually, the main superstructure will take less than a week to erect, including all the partitions.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Wood?
So can I just say one other thing, if I can, is the conditions that were put up from highways and archaeology, they are acceptable to me as the applicant.
Thank you. That will obviously have to be formally agreed between you and the planning team. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for your presentation. Our next registered speaker is Councillor Moody. You are a registered speaker.
I've been speaking.
You've been speaking. Right, so you don't wish to make a presentation as a registered speaker? No, fine, thank you. Okay, well, we've had questions. We've had a bit of debate in amongst the questions as well. But before we proceed to the next stage and I make it the recommendation, are there any points of discussion anyone wishes to make? Councillor Moody.
I should have said, yes, I will speak. I just wanted to make sure, Pat, that, or Mr. Wyman, I'm sorry, that all the conditions that have been mentioned will be captured to, how can I put it, just to make sure that I would just like to, yes, I just want to ensure that the conditions are adequate for the site. I did have a couple of other, one other issue was with condition 8. With the heat source, the air source heat pump, it's because the site is walled on all sides. I'm concerned about noise and just wanted to make sure, and I should have asked the applicant, that it would be mounted on, I presume it's standard for anti-vibration to reduce the noise. And also with that particular, because they do make a hum, those machines, whether we can insert a condition that a post-installation test can be made to ensure that it is adhering to the condition. That's really my only other concern. Did I make that clear?
You did.
It took me a long way to get there.
I'm just rereading condition 8, sorry.
I was going to say there are noise monitoring levels detailed in condition 8.
Yes, but what I'm suggesting is that whether a post-installation report from the applicant can be supplied to ensure that those conditions have been adhered to.
This is a relatively standard condition we will put on air source heat pumps because yes, in some circumstances, depending on the model, where they're located, what they're sited on, they can be. I think someone said they can. There's a bit of a background hum to them, and there is. But the condition specifically sets out no more than 5 decibels above background, and the equipment shall be installed, maintained, and retained in accordance with this for the lifetime of the development. So I don't think it needs a further condition to say it's got to continue because the condition already says that. It would be unusual to ask for a post-installation report, but what we would normally do is if we subsequently get any complaints that this is noisy and causing concerns, at that point we would it's more likely that our environmental health team would go with some noise monitoring equipment to get to see what's happening and then take whatever action we need to comply with it.
But my only reason is that it is installed in a 1 metre wide gap, which is the height of the two buildings and the height of the stone wall. And I'm just concerned that could amplify the sound.
I absolutely understand that, and I think it's, to be honest, it will be down to the applicant before installation to ensure that they did comply with the condition. There's so many heat pumps installed now throughout all sorts of different scenarios. I'm sure that the vast majority of manufacturers have quite detailed information about noise in this situation and how much is amplified in that situation, and then if it's surrounded by solid structures, and I've certainly seen examples where they've come on site, they've looked at it and said, no, actually to get to a reasonable noise level, we need to put some sound attenuation around it. So I'm quite comfortable that condition does capture the concerns you've got.
Okay, any other points of debate before we move to a vote? Sorry, Councillor Guthrie.
It's not a question, or it's just a statement, really, and I would like to actually congratulate the proposer on putting forward a building that we'd certainly like to see more of across a lot of the applications that come in front of us.
Thank you. One comment I would endorse also. Well, the officer's recommendation is for conditional approval, not only for the 10 conditions that are in the printed submission, but for the additional conditions that the officer put up at the start of this presentation. So I think that makes 12 conditions in all. So the officer's recommendation is for conditional approval. I move that recommendation. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you. So I'm now going to ask you to vote, and those in favour of voting for the officer's recommendation, which is conditional approval, please show.
7, Chair.
Sorry. Were you 4? All right, let's do that again so we're absolutely sure. Those in favour of this recommendation for conditional approval, please show.
8, Chair.
Those against?
1 against.
The application is approved. Conditional approval. Thank you very much. Planning officer is just going to take a moment. Okay, thank you very much. That was our only planning application today, so we move on to item 8, which is planning appeals update.
Chair, I seem to have mislaid my presentation.
Those watching on the live stream, we're just having an IT moment. We'll be with you shortly. There. Okay, members of the committee, we're ready to go. We're off. This is the appeals update.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry about that. A number of appeals to quickly go through today. I think I might say all dismissed. So, start off with 27 Poundspark Road, Borough. It was an application for a two-storey side extension. That's where the application site is. You can see the proposed extension on the clearly on the east and west elevation, and then from the north, and that's the site. So this is slightly unusual in that the inspector has considered that actually this site is a little bit different to most of them in that particular area. It's a little bit wider, so it was acceptable. Disagreed with council in terms of the unique position of the appeal site. A two-storey extension wouldn't have a harmful impact, but the appeal was dismissed because the submitted ecological survey was out of date, and that was the only reason why it was submitted. And it's the first time I've seen where you've got a representative of the inspector goes to the site and comes up with a recommendation for approval, but then the inspector dismisses it. But it's purely because of the lack of an up-to-date preliminary ecological report. So, subsequent to the appeal, a further application has now been submitted with an updated ecological report, and the application, following this appeal, the application, there's no doubt, will be recommended for approval because the inspector found that it was acceptable in all, subject to the ecological survey not finding anything. Saying that.
It just shows that planning is subjective.
Can I ask a question on that, please? This ecological survey, are they date limited?
Yes, generally speaking, it's 12 months,
And why?
because things change.
Do they?
Well,
No, but be simple question. Do they?
yes. In terms
Always?
of the common one is bat roosts. Most permanent bat roosts are there for a long time, but we've come across situations where there's nothing using a roof, say 2 years ago. Another survey comes back, and then there is protected species using it. So yes, things can change over time.
Okay, thank you very much. Sometimes I like to ask what I used to call in Scotland the daft laddie question, because it's a simple question: is it date limited? If so, why? That's it. Thank you.
And I didn't mean to be flippant in terms of things changing, but
I get it, but my own experience over many years of looking at sites.
Move on.
The next one is Blue Down. And it was the extension and conversion of an existing garage. So there's the site. That's existing, and what you need to be looking at on the top line is to the garage to the right-hand side of the existing building, and then on the south elevation to the right, obviously the garage on the left. So the proposal is going from that to that. So if I go back a stage, quite a significant extension. We consider the main issues were the impact on the character and appearance of the main dwelling and the impact on the neighbours. The inspector goes through quite some detail and accepted that due to the recessed position of the proposed two-storey element, it would appear subservient to the main dwelling. I have to say, from a personal point of view, I think that's a bit of a stretch, but that's what the inspector concluded. However, the pitch of the main roof for the proposed extension would be shallower than that of the main dwelling. The roof of the proposed entrance porch would be uncharacteristically steep. The eaves line of the proposed porch would be higher than that of the front porch, and the first floor windows have an uncharacteristic squat horizontal appearance and a large expanse of unrelieved wall below. And to the rear, the flat-roofed two-storey element, together with its full-height windows and lack of detailing, would appear stark and utilitarian. So, considered that the extension would be incongruous and unacceptably harm the character and appearance of the host dwelling, but concluded that it wouldn't have a visually overbearing or result in a material loss of privacy to the neighbour. Again, which I think is quite interesting when you look at the middle. Go back to the site location plan. So you've got a neighbouring, I'm assuming it is the White House, a neighbouring dwelling to the left is looking at it here, and you can see on the location plan where the garage is. So when you're looking from the neighbouring garden, instead of looking at what you'd see is the west elevation here in that small garage, you go from that to quite a significant two-storey section, relatively close to the boundary. But the inspectors concluded that relationship was acceptable. Officers had a different view, but again, come back to Councillor Moody's point, it just demonstrates that it isn't. It's not empirical evidence, yes or no. It is. There is a subjectivity to making planning decisions when we're talking about impact. Move on to Haxter Barn. This was the siting of ancillary accommodation. So that's That's the site. That's the proposal. So it's a timber-clad chalet. Although I do wonder, I do wonder looking at whether it's a timber-clad container. But so the officers' concerns were the impact on the character and appearance of the area and the scenic beauty of the natural landscape, and whether the proposed development would provide suitable living conditions of future occupiers given its relationship with the access. So I'll just draw attention to a couple of the inspector's comments. So the inspector considered the proposed ancillary building being prefabricated has not been specifically designed with the surrounding context in mind. The angular form, flat roof and timber cladding are at odds with the surrounding buildings in respect of both form and materials. As such, the proposed building would appear out of keeping with the existing house and other buildings in the area. And they went on to say that the building would be visible from vantage points which are not solely private views. The building would be screened by a wall on one side. However, due to its positioning, it would be difficult for any landscape screening to be introduced on the more open sides, given the proximity of the access lane. Whilst views from wider area would be more limited, it would be prominent and visually jar with the existing house on approach despite its subservient form. So concluded that it would have a harmful impact on the character and appearance area and wouldn't comply with the policy requirements for development in the national landscape, which I think is a good decision, to be honest.
Two interesting things about this, I think. One, just for context, this is next door to Buckland Abbey. I mean, within a stone's throw of Buckland Abbey. But the other is, I seem from memory to think that this was, the application was for temporary use, in that the applicant's mother needed somewhere to live but was old and wouldn't need it for that long. And when it was no longer required, it would be taken away. I think that was the framework in which this was proposed. But
I think that's right, but I don't think it was temporary in terms of a set period. It was so
as long as it takes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But an interesting one, nevertheless, from that context. Okay.
The next one is Pitcher Farms at Chillerton. The development was for the creation of 2 cottages. The appeal was dismissed. The appeal comprises the former pub and residential accommodation. The proposal was to create 2 cottages out of it, which would result in a net increase of 1. One of the main issues was, and I'm struggling to quite understand what happened here really. So the inspector, the main parties agree that the appeal site lies within the zone of influence for the Tamar Valley EMS, but there wasn't a unilateral provided to deal with it. So I think the applicant potentially missed a bit of a trick there, because that's a relatively straightforward reason for refusal to deal with. So the inspector goes through this in quite detail and sets out, in order to grant permission, I must be satisfied that it can be established, and I haven't seen this one before, beyond reasonable scientific doubt, and having regard to the manner in which the development would be carried out, and that's how you deal with the unilateral. So without the So the appellant agrees that mitigation would be required and submits that a contribution could be secured using a planning condition or a unilateral, but no such unilateral accompanies this appeal. So that and it's been established, although we did have done it in the past and then got a wrist slapped. It's been quite clearly established you can't use a condition for ask for a payment. It has to be a unilateral.
Have they reapplied?
Not as far as I'm aware, but reading through the rest of it, the inspector fundamentally concluded it was a sustainable location for development of this scale. My reading of the appeal decision is that, unless I've missed something, the only issue is the lack of the unilateral.
I was quite surprised when I saw it as well, because it's in such a dilapidated condition now, and anything would be an improvement.
Sorry, there was one other point, and it comes back to a comment earlier. The submitted ecology report highlights the presence of bats, but relates to a different proposal to that which is the subject of the appeal. Moreover, it is very old, so without an up-to-date survey, it is simply not known what mitigation is required. So I would suggest that is probably not the most difficult dismissed appeal to overcome for the applicant looking through it. But to the best of my knowledge, we haven't had an application yet, but I haven't really been keeping an eye out for it. Sorry, I didn't go through that. That's sorry. Now the last one is Greystone Bridge. This was a certificate of lawful use for use as a single dwelling house. There was a public inquiry where the inspector took evidence on oath. It's an interesting appeal decision for members to read. I think the paragraph that I think sums it up to me, and I'll just read it so it's not my words, it's the inspector's words. In this case, the appellant's evidence is muddled and contradictory, and no convincing explanation has been given to why different dates were given for the completion of works and dates of occupation, which are much later than claimed. So I think that there was, on one document it said the occupation started at this point, on another document it said it started on this point, and there just wasn't a consistent. My reading of I wasn't in the inquiry, but my reading of the appeal decision is that there was just inconsistencies in the evidence, that the inspector concluded that they, on the balance of probabilities, they couldn't conclude that there'd been residential occupation, continuous residential occupation for the requisite time period.
Having sat through that appeal, I got full credit to our officers that were during that appeal. They were brilliant, basically, and they fully understand why the inspector reached the decision he did so quickly.
Thank you for that. Okay, thank you very much, Pat, for that. Bring us to the last item on our agenda, which is the undetermined major applications. We take these by sort of exception. Anyone particularly wants to talk about them. But my eye is drawn to the first two, which are old friends of ours, the Wool Grading Centre and the old woolen mill in Old Taunton. And the updated commentary there, the applicant has stated they will not carry out any further work. Does that draw that to an end?
I certainly think it draws it to the beginning of the end. Officer, the case officer is working through the final the consultation responses. I anticipate a report being completed relatively soon. My understanding is that if any further reports are requested by any consultees, they will not be forthcoming, is my understanding. So we would then deal with it on the basis of do we or do we not have the information to
Oh,
do.
I see. Right. Okay. So they won't carry out any further work in terms of providing more information.
That's my understanding.
Okay. So they will.
I can seek clarification of that, but that is my understanding.
Okay. Okay. So they will come forward as planning applications to be determined.
Yes.
Yeah. We look forward to that.
Yes, on the basis of the information we have now, without seeking any further information.
Got it. Okay. And then the next two down are, we've had these sort of discussions before about trying to round up 106 contributions. Are we making progress there?
Sorry, contributions or
agreements.
In terms of the first one, I understand there's a draft currently with colleagues, and Jethro's is currently sat with the appellants or the applicant's solicitors.
So correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding was that we gave them 6 months and then we brought it back again if they hadn't signed or agreed. Is that correct?
I think we've talked about imposing that in the past as a resolution. It was part of the review I think I did probably 4 years ago now. But we actually, as a committee, you haven't been resolving in those terms. So there isn't on this one.
So would that have to be part of the conditions going forward then?
When I first got here, but certainly since I've been at some point in the past, when applications came to committee needing a 106 agreement, and provided it wasn't a straightforward unilateral for Tamar EMS, the resolution was approve subject to a 106. Yeah. If no progress has been made within a 6 month period, it comes back, and it was generally a conversation between myself, the lawyer, and the chair to agree whether progress had or hadn't been made. So if there was progress being made and we're just about to sign it, then I wouldn't necessarily see a need to bring it back. But if it's just stalled and nothing's happened, then I think that's something that ought to come back. But I'd be nervous about having an absolute black and white. If it's not done within 6 months, it's got to come back, because for various reasons there can be legitimate reasons why things take some time to go through the process.
I get
meet
that.
halfway and say that the next update to these, whether any tangible progress has been made within the last 6 months.
Yes, we can do that.
And that will then prompt us to bring them back.
I am reluctant to see loads of 106s sat on applicants' desks waiting for them to sign them as a holding pattern. I know we've had this conversation before, and
I think
probably best carried on outside.
Well, I think it would be wrong of me to say that every delay is always the applicant's fault. That is not. I've certainly been aware of situations in the past where, perhaps on larger residential schemes, the terms of the option an applicant's got is that they will buy the site within X number of months of a planning permission being granted. As soon as the agreement's signed, the planning permission is issued. So I'm certainly aware of where a developer's been quite clear saying, well, I can't sign it yet because I don't want to buy the site for another 4 months, so I'm going to sit on it until I have to. So yeah, there are situations that can occur. I'm not aware that any of these are in that situation at the moment, but I think these, if we bring a full update next time.
Sort of mark with an asterisk, if absolutely nothing has happened within the last 6 months, it will then prompt us to bring it back. Okay, thank you.
A quick comment for the benefit of all of us that went to Baldwin's land adjacent to Baldwin's Drive, that they said that there could be no affordable housing due to timescale and costs having gone up. Yet we have this before us that says access for up to 20 dwellings that will have 30% affordable. Just a note of interest.
Anyone else want to bring up Councillor Leach?
Yeah, Redford Way, I'm assuming that's finished because it's come through plan. I just wonder why it's still on here. 3815/22 PA. It's my bit of judgment that has gone through.
Well, it was approved subject to a 106 agreement, wasn't it? So I don't believe the 106 agreement has yet been finalised and signed. So the decision wouldn't be issued until the 106 agreement has been signed. So it will stay on the list until the decision has been formally issued by the council.
Okay, but the consultant's view of the viability has already come through.
Yes, it has.
Yeah, so it should just be 106 again.
Yes.
Okay. And the other one is parcel 4B. I understand that that's, well, no, there's been changes to that, so it's come out for consultation. I have asked if I can see a construction plan on this one, and also where their site compound's going to be, because I'm very concerned about what the developer is thinking there.
I will leave that with the case officer to deal with.
Okay, okay.
That concludes our meeting. Thank you very much. Switch off the live stream. Just one comment to make when we're off air.